is a state which organizes its own vanishing, a state which is in its very essence the process of the non-state. Perhaps as for Adorno, the informal music is the process, in a work, of the destruction of all forms. So we can say that in the original thought of Marx, dictatorship of the proletariat was a name for a state which is subtracted from all classical laws of a normal state. For a classical state is a form of power, but the state named by Marx, dictatorship of proletariat, is the power of unpower, the power of the disappearance of the question of power. In any case, we name subtraction this part of negation which is oriented by the possibility of something which exists absolutely apart from what exists under the laws of what negation negates. So, negation is always, in its concrete action, political or artistic, suspended between destruction and subtraction. That the very essence of negation is destruction has been the fundamental idea of the last century. The fundamental idea of the beginning century must be that the very essence of negation is subtraction. But subtraction is not the negation of destruction, no more than destruction has been the negation of subtraction, as we have seen with Schoenberg or Marx. The most difficult question is precisely to maintain the complete concept of negation from the point of view of subtraction. As Lenin, Schoenberg, or Marcel Duchamp, or Cage, or Mao Zedong, or Jackson Pollock have maintained the complete concept of negation from the point of view of destruction. To clarify the very complex interplay between destruction, negation, and subtraction, I propose to read with you a fragment of a magnificent poem of Pier Paolo Pasolini. Pasolini is well known as a filmmaker. In particular, as you know, he has directed during the 60s and the 70s profound contemporary visual readings of the two great Western intellectual traditions, the ancient Greeks, with movies like Medea and Oedipus, and the Judeo-Christianity with the Gospel according to Matthew, and a very complex script about the life of St. Paul. All that constitutes a difficult thinking of the relationship between history, myths, and religion. Pasolini was simultaneously a revolutionary Marxist and a man forever influenced by his religious childhood. So his question was, is the revolutionary becoming of history, the political negativity, a destruction of the tragic beauty of the Greek myth and of the peaceful promise of Christianity? Or do we have to speak of a subtraction where an affirmative reconciliation of beauty and peace becomes possible in a new egalitarian world? Pasolini is also well known for the relationship between his private life and his public convictions. not only was gay, but this was a part of his political vision. Many years before the beginning of the gay and lesbian movement. He perfectly knew that the desire, and in its own case, the desire for young poor workers of the suburbs of Rome, is not independent of our ideological choices. Once more, the question is to inscribe sexual desire in the political negativity, not as a purely subversive and destructive feature, but as a creative displacement of the line which separates the individual subjectivity from the collective one. Pasolini has been murdered in November 1975. He was 53 years old. The circumstances of this horrible murder are still obscure today. But certainly, they are exactly at the point where political determinations are linked with sexual situations. It is this point which has been for Pasolini a constant source of new truths, but also an existential tragedy. Marvelous movies, political commitments, critical essays, great novels, new existential style. Beyond all that, Pasolini is the greatest poet of his generation. We can distinguish three major poetical collections. First, the poems written when Pasolini was 20 years old in a specific Italian dialect, the Friulan one. Here we have the attempt to subtract poetry to the authority of official Italian language and to use a popular language against the state language. It is a characteristic example of what Deleuze names minoritarian politics in poetry. Two, the great collection published in 1957, the heart of which is the magnificent poem The Ashes of Gramsci, a complex meditation concerning history, Marxist ideology, Italian landscape, and personal feeling. The title is in itself a metaphor of melancholic negation. Gramsci, the master, the father of Italian Marxism, is here like dissipated in the history's dust. Three, the two collections of the beginning of the 60s. The Religion of My Time in 1961 and Poetry in Form of a Rose in 1964. We have here the context of the fragment I shall explain today. Fundamentally, it is the bitter disappointment of Pasolini concerning the practices of the Italian left. And more precisely, two very serious failures of the Communist Party. First, an infidelity to the armed struggle of thousands of young men against fascism and Nazism during the war. Second, the Communist Party is unable to organize the revolt of thousands of young workers in the suburbs of Italian towns. So, we have here a double negation of popular young people. In the past, where their fighting is forgotten. In the present, where their revolt is despised.